Hello, my dear young professors. D.D. Jato is my name, your facilitator for economics at Omega Education Consults. This lesson is on the topic international trade. And I believe you heard the term international trade before. So take a pencil, define trade. Okay, so now convert that to that of international trade. So this is how easy the definition of international trade is. Before we get into the details, let's look at the learning objectives. By the time you are through with this lesson, you should be able to differentiate between international trade and domestic trade. You should also be able to explain and then establish the differences between principles of absolute cost advantage and that of comparative cost advantage. We will discuss what we call barriers to international trade and the reasons for the barriers to international trade. You should also be able to demonstrate the explanation regarding the advantages and disadvantages a country stands to gain or lose as a result of international trade. Then we'll look at terms of trade, balance of trade, and balance of payments, and then do some mathematical gymnastics on that. Then we'll look at what we term financing balance of payment deficits and then solving balance of payment deficit. And then lastly, we'll look at trade protection and the reasons why countries would like to protect their trade. This topic is a very huge one, so we'll break it down into phases, right? So we'll start and then continue in another session. Okay, so write the definition for international trade. Great. So international trade simply refers to the exchange of goods and services and movement of people among countries. And this involves the sale of goods and services that have been produced in a given country to other countries, and the purchasing of goods and services produced by other countries into a given country. If we sell commodities that we have produced for other countries, it is called exports. And if we buy commodities from other countries into our country, it is termed imports. So for international trade, there will be a lot of importation and exportation of goods and services, right? So we continue to look at domestic trade and international trade, the differences between these. Now, if we talk about domestic trade, which is also known as local trade or internal trade, it is the exchange of goods and services among economic agents within the same geographical borders of a given country. That is what we call domestic trade. On the other hand, international trade simply is the exchange of goods and services between or among countries. So take a pencil and then write as many as 5 differences between local trade and international trade. Awesome work done. So let's look at it. Compare your responses to what we have here. Now, in domestic trade, there's the use of the same currency. So in Ghana, the currency that we use is the Ghana cedi. So wherever you go within the country, you buy goods and services using the Ghana cedi, and no other currency is authorized to be used. However, when we get into international trade, there's use of different currencies, meaning every country that you move to, you need to use the currency of that particular country. So if I move from Ghana to Togo, I have to use the CFA franc. If I move from Ghana to Nigeria, I have to use the Naira. If I move from Ghana to US, I have to use the US dollar. If I move to France, I have to use the euro. If I move to Japan, I have to use the yen. So different currencies are used depending on the country in which you are during international trade. Now, with local trade or domestic trade, there are no restrictions to movement of goods and persons within the geographical border of that particular country. So this simply means that no one will stop you. No one will prevent you from moving goods and services from one part of the country to the other, or you yourself moving from one part of the country to the other. However, with international trade, there are restrictions to movement of goods and persons from one country to the other. There are measures that are put in place to prevent the free flow of people and goods from one country to the other. And that explains why if you want to move to Canada, you need a permission by way of being granted visa to move to Canada. If you are moving to France, the same thing. If you have some items and you want to move them to Germany to go and sell, the German government must give you an authority or permission to move the commodities there to sell. So these are all measures that are put in place to either prevent or reduce the free movement of people and goods from one country to the other. And these are what we call restrictions to international trade, right? Now, in domestic trade, the laws governing the standards of the given commodity are the same. So the laws governing the production of the commodity will be the same, the standards will also be the same. So for instance, in Ghana, it is illegal for anyone to sell certain commodities and services like marijuana. Marijuana is forbidden product or unlawful product to be sold in Ghana or to be traded in Ghana. And for that matter, people cannot be allowed to move marijuana into the country to sell. But when it comes to international trade, there are other countries that allow the sale of marijuana in those countries. Germany, for instance, has allowed or approved the possession of marijuana for use, for personal use, but it is not the same for that of Ghana. In some countries, prostitution is a legal economic activity. In Ghana, it is not. So there are differences in the laws that govern what is legal to be traded in and what is not legal to be traded in. When it comes to the standard, with the standard, we are looking at the quality, the level of quality of the products. They also differ from one country to the other. The quality of a given product that is accepted in one country might not be accepted in other countries because they have certain different standards. So there are some products like palm oil and vegetables in Ghana produced that have been rejected from being entered into the European markets because these do not meet the standard or the quality level of the product that the Europeans want. Another difference is that the movement of goods and persons within local trade is mostly done by land, especially either by train or by cars. However, when it comes to international trade, most of the goods are moved either by sea or people move by air because of the distances among the countries that are exchanging goods and services. Another difference is that with domestic trade, the movement of people and goods will take place within the same geographical borders of the country. Okay. However, with international trade, the movement of people and goods will be done by crossing international political boundaries. So these are some of the differences between domestic trade and international trade, right? Then we'll now look at the principles that underpin the concept of international trade. There are two of them. We have the absolute cost advantage and then the comparative cost advantage. We will take them one after the other and discuss each one of them. Now, the absolute cost advantage is the theory that was developed by Adam Smith. And this theory or principle states that various countries have different abilities or efficiencies in the production of various commodities. And for that matter, there are different costs in the production of these commodities. Some countries produce the commodities at a very high cost, others produce at a very low cost. Now, this theory is saying that countries should select and concentrate in the production of those commodities that they can produce at the lowest cost. And once the country is producing the commodity at the lowest cost, it means that that country is producing the commodity also most efficiently, given the set of inputs available. Now, the concentration of the production of the commodity that will give the country the lowest cost and highest efficiency will lead to excess output or excess production of those commodities. So that will then lead to the excess production of the commodities that the countries need, and then in turn, they will exchange. So let's use this table to further explain the concept of absolute cost advantage. So we have two countries here, and then we have two commodities here. Now, we assume that Ghana and Japan are two countries that are producing these two commodities, timber and cars. Now, when we come to Ghana, Ghana can produce 30 tons of timber. However, the same resources meant for 30 tons of timber can produce 5 tons of cars. What it means is that if Ghana converts the resources meant for the production of 30 tons of timber, those resources will be used to produce 5 tons of cars. And if Ghana converts the resources meant for the production of 5 tons of cars, that can be used to produce 30 tons of timber. So, per the principle of absolute cost advantage, Ghana has a better efficiency and can produce timber more cheaply than that of cars. Now, let's go to Japan. If Japan uses its resources to produce timber, Japan can produce 10 tons of timber. Same resources that can be used to produce timber in Japan, when converted to the production of cars, will give Japan 20 tons of cars. And same resources that is meant for the production of 20 tons of cars, when converted to the production of timber, will give Japan 10 tons of timber. So if both countries produce timber and cars, the world output for timber will be 40 tons, and the world output of cars will be 25 tons. Okay, so the concept or the principle of absolute cost advantage is that since Ghana can produce timber most cheaply and more efficiently, Ghana should concentrate in the production of timber and leave the production of cars to Japan that can produce it at a lower cost and more efficiently. Right, so let's look at what will happen when there is absolute cost advantage applied by these two countries. So the table will be this. Right, so let's observe. When Ghana converts its resources for the production of timber, what it means is that we have 30:5 cars, meaning, let's try the ratio. 5 cars will give Ghana 30 tons of timber. 5 tons of cars will give Ghana 30 tons of timber. So if you convert all these cars to timber, that will give Ghana 30 more of the timber. Right, so Ghana will now produce a total of 60 tons of timber. Now, for Japan, we are having 10:20. So in simpler terms, we have 1:2, meaning every 1 ton of timber will give Japan 2 tons of cars. So if you convert 10 tons of timber to that of cars, that will give Japan additional 20 tons of cars. So in total, Japan concentrating the production of cars will be able to produce 40 tons of cars. Now, this means Ghana is having excess output of timber, Japan is having excess output of cars. So they will now exchange. Ghana will sell timber to Japan, Japan will sell cars to Ghana. Right, so that is a principle of absolute cost advantage. Now we look at the principle of comparative cost advantage. Now this theory seems to be an improvement over the absolute cost advantage, and it was developed by David Ricardo. Now, this theory states that countries have different opportunity costs in the production of a variety of products. And for that matter, countries should concentrate in the production of those commodities that they can produce, but at a lower opportunity cost. When they concentrate in the production of these products that give them lower opportunity costs, they will be able to produce in excess and then sell to other countries. So let's use the table below to further explain. So in this table, we have two countries, Nigeria and France. Nigeria and France. And the two commodities that both countries are producing are cocoa and computers. Now, the same resources that will give Nigeria 100 tons of cocoa, when converted to the production of computers, will give Nigeria 50 tons of computers. So the opportunity cost of producing cocoa will be 50 tons of computers forgone, and the opportunity cost of producing 50 tons of computers will be 100 tons of cocoa forgone. Now let's come to France. France is producing 30 tons of cocoa and 40 tons of computers, meaning if France chooses to produce 30 tons of cocoa, it will have to forgo 40 tons of computers. And if it chooses to produce 40 tons of computers, it will forgo 30 tons of cocoa. So now let's establish the opportunity cost of production of cocoa by France. If France produces cocoa, it will have to forgo 40 tons of computers. And that is very, very high. So we produce 30 and forgo 40. If France produces 40 tons of computers, it will have to forgo only 30 tons of cocoa. So now this theory is saying that since Ghana has a lower opportunity cost in the production of cocoa, it should concentrate in the production of cocoa. And since France has lower opportunity cost in the production of computers, it should concentrate in the production of computers. When they do that, they will convert the other product to the concentration in the production of one product, and then the output will increase. So let's look at what will happen when there is comparative cost advantage employed by these two countries. So we are comparing the opportunity costs of producing cocoa and computers. So the ratio is going to be that if Ghana produces cocoa, it will forgo 50 tons of computers. Therefore, it should convert all the resources meant for the production of computers to that of cocoa. So the ratio here is going to be 1:50. 2, meaning every 1 ton of computer will give Ghana 2 tons of cocoa. So converting 50 tons of computers to cocoa will give Ghana additional 100 tons of cocoa. That will result in Ghana having a total of 200 tons of cocoa. Now, when it comes to France, the ratio is going to be 1:1.33, meaning every 1 ton of cocoa will give France 1.33 tons of computers. So if we convert 30 tons of cocoa to that of computers, then we are going to multiply this by 1.33, and that will give us approximately 40 tons of computers. So what it means is that the total quantity of computers that France can produce will be 80 tons. So by employing the theory of comparative cost advantage, Nigeria will produce more cocoa than it needs. France will produce more computers than it needs. Then they'll begin to sell to each other, right? So these are the 2 principles that have made countries concentrating in the production of certain commodities. So we realize that when it comes to Africa, most of the produce that we have for international trade are raw materials. African countries bought into these theories and they concentrated in the production of raw materials. So Ghana is producing cocoa, timber, crude oil, manganese, gold, cotton, cashew nuts, and so on and so forth. Whereas the developed countries are producing manufactured products because that is what they can produce most efficiently and then also at a lower opportunity cost. Now, at the time of developing these principles, the developed countries had already undergone industrial revolution, which has made them getting access to reliable, cheaper electricity, water. The roads were there, the technology were also available. So that was the state at which these principles were developed, right? Now, in terms of international trade, these theories will not be beneficial to African countries. And if we continue to use this, we will continue to be in debt. The reason is that these theories do not take into consideration the final prices of the commodities involved. Because the price of cocoa is way, way cheaper than the price of computer. The price of timber is way, way cheaper than the price of cars. So if we sell our product at lower prices and we end up buying their product at higher prices, then we will continue to lose at all times and perpetually be in debt. So African countries should not use this principle. Of course, it is going to be very challenging to get into industrialization. Okay, we need our rules to be intact. We need reliable, constant supply of energy. We need reliable technology, improved ones, advanced ones, and these will not come cheap. But the end result will be better off for Africa. Okay, so if you become the president, please do not subscribe to these theories because it will make us poorer and poorer forever. Right, so we look at the reasons for international trade. Why do countries get involved in international trade? So one of them is differences in technology. Regarding differences in technology, it simply means that some countries have highly advanced technology, whilst others have very, very low level of technology. So it makes the production of goods and services different for these countries. African countries have very, very low technology. Developed countries have very high level of technology. So due to that, there is variety or there are differences in the produce that are made by these countries. So African countries are concentrating in the production of low-level technologies and mostly raw materials. So the developed countries are also concentrating the production of those that require high level of technology. So then they exchange. So Ghana, raw materials, Japan, France, UK, Germany, Canada producing high-tech items like electrical gadgets, cars, aeroplanes, weapons. We cannot produce them because of low level of technology. So we are then compelled to buy from them. The internet that you are using, the laptop or the phone that you are using are all not produced in Ghana due to our low level of technology. Right. So we are always compelled to buy these items from them. The other reason for international trade is that there are different climatic conditions. Climatic conditions are the prevailing weather conditions over a given period of time, longer period of time. So in Africa, the conditions here are, the temperature here is very, very high, okay? And that gives different characteristics of crops or animals that live in Africa. In other countries where temperatures are very, very low, the characteristics of plants and animals that also live there will also be different. So due to that, it brings about different variety of produce by these countries. So they then have to exchange. So Ghana, there are some products that we can produce so easily due to our climatic conditions like cocoa, timber, and so on and so forth. Other countries do not have the climatic conditions suitable for the production of cocoa and timber and stuff like that. So that warrants exchange. The other one is also to facilitate the acquisition or generation of foreign exchange. Foreign exchange refers to the currency obtained, okay, as a result of trading or selling your product to other countries. That is the foreign currency. And in international trade, some currencies are accepted, other currencies are not accepted. The Ghana cedi is not accepted in any other country. So if you want to import the computers, the phones, the cars, the clothing, and so on and so forth, we need a foreign currency, such as the US dollar, the UK pound, the euro. Right. So in order to get these currencies, we have to sell our product to them. In order to get these currencies, to import the item that we cannot produce on our own. And international trade allows us to sell our produce to get those currencies. The other reason for international trade is that there is insufficient domestic output. That is, countries are unable to produce certain commodities in larger quantities to meet the demand of their population. But international trade allows those countries to buy from other countries to supplement what they can produce, but in sufficient quantity. So Ghana, for instance, will produce chicken, will produce rice, will produce tomatoes and so on and so forth. However, these items that we produce are not sufficient to feed the local population. And for that matter, we import rice from Vietnam, we import rice from Germany, we import rice from US, we import rice from China, Indonesia, and so on and so forth. Right. So that helps us to get higher quantity to feed the nation. We also import chicken from Brazil. Right. The next reason for international trade is the desire for variety of commodities. Sometimes countries can produce a lot of other commodities, but the citizens may want to use commodities from other countries. And variety is the spice of life, we say. So countries like Japan, they can produce phones, computers, cars. However, they import phones, computers, and cars from Germany, from China, from US, from UK, because their citizens would like to have access to variety of products produced in other countries. The next one is that there is also an equal distribution of natural resources. The entire world, different countries do not have equal distribution of resources across the world, or the natural resources. Some countries have some natural resources, others don't have them. Ghana, for instance, has gold, has diamond, has crude oil, has manganese, and so on and so forth. Other countries don't have these. Okay, some countries don't have crude oil, so that necessitates the purchasing of crude oil from other countries. Other countries don't have gold, so that would necessitate that they buy gold from other countries that have, right? International trade also promotes cordial relationship among countries. That is helps countries to have friendly association with other countries. So that's also one of the reasons for international trade. So that said, we'll move on to look at the advantages that a country stands to benefit or a country stands to get during international trade. What do we benefit from international trade? One of the benefits is that it facilitates the transfer of technology from one country to the other. Countries have different technologies. Developing countries have low technology, advanced countries or developing countries have low technology. Developed countries have high level of technology. And without international trade, it will be very difficult to get access to some of these technologies. So the internet that you are using, the phone that you are using, the computer that you are using are all developed by high level of technology from other countries. So, but international trade has allowed the transfer of such technologies to Ghana, and we are using them to advance the production of goods and services. Right, so we have drones facilitating the transfer of product from one place to the other. Irrigation technology has also come in, and so on and so forth. Right. Another benefit of international trade is access to commodities that a given country cannot produce. So Ghana, for instance, or a lot of African countries, there are some commodities that we do not have the technology to produce. But due to international trade, we are able to produce them. So currently, we are not producing cars, we are not producing phones, we are not producing ships, we are not producing airlines, we are not producing a lot of other items. But with international trade, it allows us to buy from other countries that are producing them in order to facilitate the development of the economy. One other advantage is that it helps it to generate the foreign currency to enable us buy commodities from other countries. The other benefit is that it helps a given country to buy goods to supplement what it can produce domestically, but are not enough. So domestically, it can produce a lot of items, but once those products are not enough to feed the entire population or to serve the demand within the country, international trade allows us to buy from other countries. So as I mentioned earlier, we produce rice, we produce chicken, we produce furniture, okay? But these are not enough to meet the demand for the country, and therefore we import from other countries. To provide variety of commodities, as I mentioned earlier, it also helps us to get access to variety of commodities. For instance, there are certain TV shows that we are importing to Ghana. It is due to international trade. Okay, we have our own traditional wear, but we also want variety from other countries. So we are importing suits, we are importing jeans, we are importing different footwear, and so on and so forth. Other countries also, US, for instance, produces Ford, but the citizens also want different variety of vehicles to use. So they are importing cars from Korea, from Japan, from China, from Germany, from France, and so on and so forth, right? Now, the next one is that international trade also has the benefits of leading to specialization. Now, specialization simply is a concentration of a given country's productive efforts in one product. that is concentrating the production of one commodity or some few commodities. When this is done, it allows the country to gain higher efficiency, higher technology, and then produce the commodity at a higher level of quality with minimal costs, because it gains huge production level and it helps it to get what we call economies of scale. So Ghana, for instance, over the years has specialized or concentrated in the production of cocoa. And that explains why our quality of cocoa to the world is ranked as one of the best. And Ghana is now a leading producer of cocoa in the world. Without international trade, Ghana would have spread its efforts over production of some commodities and will not be specializing in production of any one of them. As the saying goes, Jack of all trades is a master of none. International trade also has the benefit of giving wider markets to various locally produced goods and services. This means that the local produce will have access to other markets in other countries. So our local produced cocoa, furniture, vegetables, palm oil, and so on and so forth, other countries will allow our product to be sold in their countries. So that enables the country to produce goods and services on a larger scale, right? And producing on a larger scale allows the country to gain from lower average costs, which we call the economies of scale, especially that of internal economies of scale. International trade also benefits a given country by helping it to improve upon the domestic products. That is the local produced goods and services in the country. Once there's international trade and other countries are bringing their commodity into the country to sell, people will begin to compare the quality level of locally produced goods to those that have been brought into the country. And if they compare and the locally produced ones have lower quality, they will shift and go and buy the imported ones. And that explains why a lot of us are not buying made in Ghana rice, because we see that it's of lower quality. There are a lot of stones in there and so on and so forth, although it is highly nutritious, right? So a lot of people are also not buying some products in Ghana because they say they are of lower quality. But international trade will push Ghanaians who are producing those goods to research and improve upon the quality of the product. Now, let me give one example. For instance, Gasem, which is our mother producer of cement in Ghana, produces cement. Now, the cement that Gasem used to produce was compared to cement that Dangote brought into the country. And people realized that the strength level and the quality level of Dangote cement was higher than that of Gasem. And so people moved or shifted from Gasem to that of Dangote cement. And that nearly collapsed Gasem. So quickly, Gasem had to research, okay, and then Gasem was able to improve upon the quality of its product. The strength level increased, and now Gasem has 3 different brands of cement. Until Dangote came in, Gasem had only 1 brand. So Gasem now has cement for plastering, cement for blocks, cement for concrete. And that is the magic that international trade can do to push local industries to improve upon quality. The other advantage is that international trade also creates job opportunities for large number of people who have the skill to work. This happens because international trade allows countries to produce commodities in larger quantities. And once you produce in larger quantities, you need people to work to help in the production of the commodities in large quantities. So thereby leading to more employment of people, and this helps in reducing the unemployment situation in a given country. Another angle is that international trade permits movement of skilled labor from one country to the other. So people from one country are also able to get access to other countries to go and work, creating job opportunities for them. And I know you have some of your relatives, parents, brothers, nieces, and nephews who are also working abroad. Without international trade, they will be in Ghana and they might not get job opportunities for themselves. Another benefit is that international trade also helps in the generation of tax revenue. I mentioned earlier that in international trade, there is export and there is import. Countries impose taxes on commodities that are exported, and they also impose taxes on commodities that are imported. And this helps the country to get more revenue through taxation for itself in developing the nation. Now, having looked at the advantages, let's now look at some disadvantages of international trade. Now, write 5 disadvantages of international trade. Good. So let's get into the discussion. Now, international trade may lead to overdependence on other countries for their vital resources for the economic development. That is one disadvantage of international trade. Right. All right. So overdependence on other countries simply means a given country relying excessively on other countries for the supply of their needed goods and services. So a lot of African countries, as a result of international trade, are excessively relying on other countries for their needed or vital resources for their economic development. And this is extremely dangerous to African countries. The reason is that if those countries begin to stop providing African countries those resources, the whole economy of African countries will come crashing. So we are relying on the developed countries for technology. We are relying on developed countries for some raw materials. We are relying on the developed countries for machines to process our commodities into other items. And we even rely on them for food as well. If they say that they are not supplying us with this product, there will be hunger, or that starvation, there will be medical problems, there will be developmental problems, and the whole economy of Africa will grind to a halt. So that is one of the dangers associated with international trade. Another disadvantage of international trade is that it leads to brain drain. Brain drain is a migration of highly skilled labor trained by the nation's resources to other countries to work. And there are a lot of experienced, skilled individuals, human resources, that are moving to other countries to work. And the sad thing is that they even move the developed countries. So we have highly trained teachers, doctors, nurses, accountants, engineers, laboratory technicians, and so on and so forth, who are moving from Ghana or Africa to the developed countries. And the danger is that it deprives the African countries the needed skill required to process or to help in the development of the country. So they leave behind the less skilled individuals. So if you establish a given company in the country, you might not get the needed skills required to work in those companies because a lot of them will move away. So that is one other disadvantage associated with international trade. The next one is overexploitation of resources. Overexploitation of resources has to do with excessive extraction of natural resources, okay, sometimes beyond the regenerative capacity of those natural resources. If we say regenerative capacity, natural resources are naturally reproducing or they replenish themselves, okay? Some are said to be renewable, others are non-renewable. Those that are renewable are those that are able to replenish themselves within a short period of time. So if you cut a tree or the next moment you see another one springing up. Others are non-renewable. Those that are non-renewable are those resources that do not replenish themselves within human lifespan. They take hundreds of years to form. And these are usually the minerals. Okay, but as a result of international trade and the large demand or huge demand for these products outside the country, individuals within the country and even sometimes foreigners come to the country and then overly extract the resources beyond their regenerative capacity. So in Ghana, we have timber, and timber is highly sought after across the world. So because of that, people who want money, both locals and foreigners, have come to Ghana and they are felling the trees at an alarming rate beyond the regenerative capacity of these trees. And so the forest area of Ghana is dwindling at an alarming rate because we are cutting the trees indiscriminately and selling to other countries. When it comes to mining, gold, we have galamsey problem because of international trade. Without international trade, gold will not be needed so much by the people in Ghana. But because of international trade and the huge demand for gold internationally, people are rushing to mine gold wherever it is found. And they are using unauthorized means of mining the gold, thereby destroying the water bodies, destroying the farmlands, destroying vegetation, destroying animals, and polluting the atmosphere as well. So that is what we call overexploitation of natural resources as a disadvantage of international trade. The next one is that international trade may also lead to balance of payment deficit. Balance of payment deficit simply expresses a situation where the relationship between the total amount of money that a country pays to aid trading partners and what it receives from them is such that the country pays more to the trading partners and receives very little. So I mentioned earlier that in international trade, there is exports and there is imports. If a given country exports, it receives money. If a country imports, it pays money. So there is balance of payment deficit if a given country imports more commodities than it exports to aid trading partners, and more especially when these commodities also have higher prices than the exported products. So for instance, a given country may receive 100 million for exporting, $100 million for exporting commodities, and yet will import commodities and then pay 250 million dollars. Okay, so what it means is that the country is paying more, and because most of the time it doesn't have the money to pay upfront, the country will be buying in credit or on credit, and the credit purchasing will cause the country to have what we call deficit, meaning the country is owing other countries due to inability to pay for aid goods and services imported from other countries. So a very good example is this. Ghana buys gas from Nigeria, and Ghana buys on credit, and Ghana is in debt, is indebted to Nigerian government as a result of non-prompt payments of gas purchased from Nigeria. Right. So that is what we call balance of payment deficit. Now, the next disadvantage of international trade is that international trade may also lead to the collapse of infant industries or infant firms. Infant firms are firms that have been newly established and are at their developmental stages. Now, like every given infant they must be protected. Now, if these infant firms are not protected from firms that have been existent for hundreds of years or decades, what will happen is that those companies that have been existent, that have efficiency, better technology, produced at lower average cost, will compete with these firms that are at their developmental stage. And because they are at their developmental stage and they are not producing larger quantities, their average cost is high. So you end up selling commodities at higher prices by the infant firms, and then those that are already established will sell similar product of higher quality at lower prices. And this will cause people to move away from the newly established firms that are at their developmental stages. So there will be low demand for the infant firm and high demand for the firms that are already established. And that can lead to their collapse due to low demand. Okay, so let me give an example of this. Sorry. There are poultry farmers in Ghana. These poultry farmers have been in business for a very short period of time. And they are now developing their potential, their expertise in poultry farming. But these poultry farmers have to compete with chicken parts that are imported into the country from poultry farmers that have been in business for decades in China, in Brazil, in US, in Germany. Now, because these poultry farmers in these countries have been in existence for a long period of time, they produce millions of birds over a short period of time. Their cost of operation is also very, very low, and that explains why chicken parts imported from these countries have lower prices in Ghana. And people are buying the imported frozen chicken as compared to purchasing the locally raised chicken. Okay, and because of that, poultry farmers are struggling to survive, to maintain their businesses, because there is huge low demand for their products. And for that matter, a lot of them are collapsing. So that's a clear case of infant industry being pushed out of business due to international trade. Another one is the use of retaliatory measure for international trade. This simply means people using their economic might to punish others in retaliation of what they have done. So you do me, I do you kind of thing. So if Nigeria and Ghana are at loggerheads or at conflict, in order to punish Ghana, Nigeria can say that, okay, I will not supply you with gas. And once Nigeria doesn't supply us with gas that is needed to power various engines to generate electricity in Ghana, Ghana will suffer at the tail end. Okay, another country that also supplies us with rice can say that, okay, we are not going to supply you with rice again in retaliation of what you've done. And that can cause people to to starve, right? So the next disadvantage is that it can lead to inflow of inferior, unwholesome, dangerous products into a given country. Now, international trade sometimes causes the import of inferior products or unwholesome products, or sometimes even unwanted waste products. And various developing countries import a lot of waste products from the developed country. And this ends up harming the health of individuals and then also the environment. So Ghana, for instance, is one of the leading importers of waste electronic products in the world. And when they get here, people go and pick them and then burn them to get some metallic substances in them. And that leads to the pollution of the environment, contributing to global warming. In Ghana, we also import over aged vehicles. That is, vehicles that have been used for excessive number of years. Second-hand refrigerators, second-hand air conditions, second-hand clothes, second-hand footwear, almost second-hand of everything. And these are products that are waste in developed countries, and we bring them here into Ghana. This ends up making us have waste management problems because some of these waste products, we don't have the technology to manage them or recycle them. So they end up choking our country with waste, right? Then other disadvantage is that international trade can also lead to dumping. Now, before I tell you what dumping is not, before I tell you what dumping is, let me tell you what dumping is not. Dumping has nothing to do with inferior products. Dumping has nothing to do with inferior products. Dumping has nothing to do with unwanted or unwholesome products. Dumping is an international trade practice, okay, in which a given country that has produced a given commodity at the same cost of the same quality sells that product to foreign countries at lower prices. So a given product sold at produced at a cost of 10 cedis in Ghana and is sold at 12 cedis in Ghana of the same quality, that product is sent to Nigeria and is sold at 8 cedis. Because we are selling the same product at 8 cedis in Nigeria and it is lower than what is sold in Ghana, Nigeria will consider that as dumping. Right. Now, this practice is very dangerous because it has the potential of collapsing locally established companies. Because the locally established companies usually will sell their product at higher prices because of inefficiency and high costs. But when the products are brought from other countries and are sold at lower prices, people shift to buy the imported ones at lower prices, leading to very, very low demand for local firms, thereby leading to their collapse. Okay, so these are some disadvantages associated with international trade. On that note, I'd like to say thank you for staying through to the end. And I know that you will be able to use these principles to attend to various situations when you assume a position in the country. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.